Okay, pre-cal, here is your third and final video on graphing sine. So we are going to start by recognizing that we are going to be in degrees this time. Our amplitude is equal to 1 because there's just a 1 in front of sine. The period, of course, is going to be 360, but it's going to be divided by 2, so that's 180. So we're going to need 180 degrees now to build that full cycle. So the other thing that's going on here is I've got theta minus 45. That means we are moving everything to the right 45 degrees. Okay, now because of the nature of the sine graph, since it's continuing like that oscillation of up and down, it's usually a little bit easier when we're graphing not to actually physically move the graph 45 degrees, but to adjust our scale a little bit. So here's what I mean by that. Anytime we are moving in a phase shift, right or left, we're going to actually label the middle of our x-axis with our shift. So a right shift of 45 would mean that my graph doesn't start at 0 now, it starts at 45 degrees. So this, we're going to label this center value as positive 45 degrees. Okay, so now what does that look like? Well, I'm going to treat that obviously as my center point. But since from that point I am going to draw one cycle of my graph to the right and one to the left, I'm going to make 4 marks to the right and 4 marks to the left, just like I do for when I'm starting at 0. Okay, so nothing's different there. Okay, the period this time is at 180 degrees. That means I'm going to be cycling through right there. All right, so that means that between 45 and this mark, I need 180 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I am going to think of this, I'm just going to divide 180 by 4, and that way I'll know how much each space is worth. So when I divide 180 by 4, I am going to get 45 degrees. So that means that each of these, this is going to be 45, this is going to be 45, etc., etc. So when I add 45 degrees to this middle 45, I get 90 degrees. When I add 45 again, I get 135. When I add 45 again, I get 180 degrees. Okay, when I add again my 45, I am going to get 225. All right, and this makes sense since you've moved the graph that 45 degrees to the right. That's why it looks like this, okay? So I don't want anyone to freak out. Too late, Miss Griggs, we're already freaking out. I'm just kidding. Okay, all right, so we already know that 45 degrees, or 180 divided by 4 is 45 degrees. So to the left of 45, I'm going to subtract 45. So if I subtract 45 degrees from 45, I get to 0. And then if I do it again, I get negative 45. And if I do it again, I get negative 90. And if I do it again, I get negative 135. All right, so that's where we are right now. Okay, so other things going on. Well, I need to consider the amplitude. So that means that from the x-axis up 1 and from the x-axis down 1, that's what my graph is going to look like. So I am going to just draw some dashed lines to help me. Okay, and I'm going to call this y equals 1 since the amplitude is 1. And I'm going to drop down and do the same thing below the x-axis, y equals negative 1. This is just to guide my graph. All right, so remember, I'm starting at 45, and I'm going to draw a whole cycle. So here's the cycle. And then I'm going to draw another cycle right here. Don't forget to put in your y-axis. Remember, your y-axis always occurs at 0, and that's what your graph would look like. Okay, next example. We have radians again. And we have an amplitude of 2. That's right there. The period this time is just going to be 2 pi because there's an understood 1 right there. And then right here, I am moving to the left pi over 2. And then I'm also moving up 1 and we're reflecting. So there's a lot going on with this one. So we're going to have to take this step by step. All right, so the very first thing we want to consider this up 1 here. That's the first thing we need to do, because from our x-axis, the x-axis is not going to be the center of my graph. The x-axis is actually going to be, my center of my graph is actually going to be up here. Okay, so I'm going to call this up 1. So I'm going to call this y equals 1. So the center of my graph is actually going to go through this value. All right, so on here, I am going to label a middle point, okay, because we are moving left pi over 2. So that means that my graph is actually going to start at negative pi over 2. All right, I want a full cycle to the right of that and a full cycle to the left of that. So I'm going to draw 4 labels out to the left and to the right. Okay, so because the period is 2 pi divided by 4 is pi over 2, just like it is on the unit circle. So that means each of these is worth pi over 2. All right, so having said that, from negative pi over 2, if I add pi over 2, I get 0. That's where my y-axis is going to go. And then I add another one and another one. And then to the left, I subtract pi over 2. So negative pi, negative 3 pi over 2, negative 2 pi, negative 5 pi over 2. Okay, that's what that's going to look like. This one's kind of challenging, not going to lie to you. All right, so we've taken care of up 1, left pi over 2, the period. Now we need to take care of the amplitude. The amplitude is 2, so if this red line, this red dotted line represents 1, we would go up 2 more. So this is y equals 3. And then we would go down another one. So this is going to be at x or y equals negative 1 because this is 1 and this is 2, because remember your amplitude is 2. All right, so from here we have a reflection. So that means that our graph is going to go down this way and then come up there. Man, I have done better graphs. This is hideous. Okay, and then of course your y-axis right there. Awesome. It's a little challenging, but you got it. It's all good.